What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I am rejoined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. We got an NBA Cup final. You got 5 days off. Legs, are you feeling refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to talk some NBA Cup?
All I do when I get a couple days, quote, I'm put these in air quotes, off, is just do more than I normally do and wear myself out anyway. So that's really kind of where I'm at. I'm out here in LA, man. I'm on West Coast time right now. So I was so looking forward to the game last night, and unfortunately, it just was pretty anticlimactic end of the Cup for me, man. I wanted to see Oklahoma City, not maybe if it's not their best punch, like at least look like the version I've watched pretty much all year. I don't want to take anything away from the Bucks did. I just wish it was a better game, like in the second half, because we build it up. We talk so much about it when the games start. Those pool play games, they're a big deal. We hype them up. We talk about them. We talk about them obviously through the quarterfinals and semis, and we had some great basketball to that point until we get to the last game, and I'm just disappointed we didn't get a little bit more drama in the second half. But I guess, hey, let's give the credit to the Bucks because they took it to them and they really manhandled them in the second half of this game.
They really did, man. And this is going to be a Bucks heavy show because they've earned it. I had some Bucks fans earlier in the year. They start 2-8. They go on a little bit of a run. And why is nobody talking about the Bucks? Well, they're 500. They just got back to average. What are they going to do? But now we did a show on them, or I did a show, I should say, on Monday about the Bucks. And guess what? Here we are Wednesday. We're going to do another show about the Bucks because this was, in my opinion, their signature win of the season. It's not the only good win they've had, but this one, both being a Cup final and being over a team that we believe is a true title contender in the Oklahoma City Thunder, and not just a win, but a convincing win, 97-81. They hold the Oklahoma City Thunder to 81 points in this one. It was a dominant performance, and it was really dominant at the end of the third quarter and the start of the fourth quarter. That's when the Bucks made their move. It was just a haymaker that put this game away. So what stood out to you about what the Bucks were able to accomplish in this one?
Yeah, I mean, they really have only had about 3 or 4 wins that you put in that category all year. I mean, it's not their fault. Like, some of it is just the schedule works out that way sometimes. You get a softer stretch in your schedule. They're in that right now. So you always have to kind of look at both things. Who are they playing? How are they playing? Those are the two things you're always trying to weigh. There's no doubt that this was their best win of the year. Now, it had a weird feel to it because it's on a neutral court, and that just gives the whole game a weird vibe because the electricity is just not there
at all.
And that's like a strange thing because that's a big part of watching important basketball games, right? Is the environment of the crowd. And it's just, and look, it can work both ways. You can get down, and if you're playing at home, man, maybe they help rally you. The crowd stays behind you. They get you into it. At some point, your defense is energized by that, and you come back and you are able to wipe out a deficit. Or the opposite, you could just play so well because you're at home that you don't give the other team a chance. We never really saw that energy play a part in this game. So at that point, it almost is, in a lot of ways, Adam, even though there's people there, it's kind of like what we saw in the bubble, where it's like you have to generate your own adrenaline, and it's like, that's why I thought coaching going into the bubble was at a premium, because it's like you're not going to get adrenaline from the home crowd to help your defense or help your shot making. It's going to come from within. So X's and O's may be even more important. It kind of felt a little bit bubbly to me last night. And as a result, once Oklahoma City got into that mode where they were not making shots and they felt flat, there was no lifeline for them. They weren't going to get that from anywhere. And to the Bucks' credit, once they sensed that, they just snuffed it out completely. There was going to be no run. There was going to be no point where this was going to get dramatic in the fourth quarter. Milwaukee sensed it. They were playing harder. They were playing more physical. And at some point, somebody was going to start making shots. And the Bucks, once they started making some threes in the second half, that's when they got their big 20-point separation. So again, I'm going to give all the credit to the Bucks because they did what they had to do. Very professional approach to this entire thing, and particularly last night. And for Oklahoma City, I don't think there's any question, probably their worst performance of the year.
Yeah. I give the Bucks a lot of credit for that. And some of this, I'm so curious if you think, sometimes in the NBA, this is why single elimination is so fun. In the NBA, anybody can go ice cold from three. Little things can happen. I don't think the Bucks, you just mentioned that they got caught fire in the second half a little bit. They only had 46 points in the second half. It was really only the end of the third, start of the fourth where they made shots. Gary Trent had some. Damian Lillard had some. It wasn't even for a sustained, in my opinion, a sustained period of the second half. It was just a little window. And sometimes when you're in a dogfight, it only takes one extended run to kind of put it away. And I thought that's what happened. But if I look at the matchup part of this, because the Thunder are an interesting team. I want to save them. I always want to talk about the winner first and give them the most credit. But one of the things you wonder about Oklahoma City is size going to be an issue for them? And last night, you look at this, only 28 points in the paint for the Bucks. It wasn't points, but it was rebounds. You look at Giannis, 19 rebounds, 15 defensive rebounds. They just owned those parts of the game, the parts where you can just be bigger than the other team, more physical, handle the physicality. That part stood out to me. And Giannis, 19 rebounds to go with 26 points, and then, of course, 10 assists as well. He presented, I thought, a problem that Oklahoma City is not equipped to handle.
Completely agree. And so let's start there. The size disparity and just visually what that looked like last night. And going into the game, I thought, Oklahoma City, they've got a stable of wings that are good defenders that, have some length that can at least maybe do a decent job on him initially. That was just not the case at all. He manhandled Jalen Williams. He manhandled Caruso. He manhandled Wallace. It didn't matter. It didn't matter who was on him. Anybody smaller, he completely overwhelmed. And you're right. It wasn't like all about, some nights, you see the Bucks and Giannis, who leads the league in points in the paint. They might get 60 points in the paint some nights where it's just a joke. It's a layup line. You're right. It dunks over and over and over. That's what we're talking about here. But what happened was he so overwhelmed those early one-on-one matchups against smaller guys. And it led to him at the rim. Then it led to some high-low action with Brook Lopez. Then it led to the whole defense shifting to that side of the floor when he had the ball with his back to the basket. 7 of his 10 assists were for 3-point shots. So that's the reaction. It doesn't always show up in points in the paint, but it shows up as, what are we going to do to deal with this guy right now that is just absolutely steamrolling our smaller guys that we're trying to play him with? And it seemed like every time down the floor, he had a 6'5", 6'6" guy. He was trying to just physically throw around. And now you have to figure out what's your reaction to that. And once the reaction starts to come, Milwaukee's role players made 3-point shots. It was that simple. So you're right. That reared itself last night. Now, here's the thing. This was a problem for them last year. They went out and addressed it, but we haven't seen them play a bigger lineup yet. I don't know how much they're going to play Chet and Isaiah together. I don't know. We have to wait and see if that's even viable for them on both ends to do that. So will that even answer the problem? Because they like to play 4 smallish type wings or average size wings and 1 big. That might be the lineup they have to go with if they can't figure out Hartenstein and Wemby on Chet playing together. So we don't know that. That's way down the road. Let's figure that out. But when they do go with 1 big and the rest of their normal rotation, they can look overwhelmed with size. And that's exactly what it looked like to me last night. And I was a little bit disappointed. I didn't think that some of those guys put up enough resistance. Jalen Williams at the top of the list. He just looked like he kind of just waved the white flag against him. And look, I understand, man, the dude is 7 feet tall and he's a freak. I get all of that. But if this is what you're going to go with, this strategy, you better be willing to fight a little harder. And I just felt like Jalen Williams kind of just gave ground. I can't deal with this guy. And next thing you know, boom, there he is. He's at the rim, or now you got 4 guys flooding the lane. He kicks it out for an open 3.
I think all of these teams, in the NBA, it's rare that you can win just with precision alone. Execution, those types of things. They're essential. You have to have them at the highest levels. When you get to the playoffs, execution matters. But there is also a level of everybody's going to eventually have their cards on the table. Now let's see who can run through the wall the hardest, right? And I think that Giannis is specifically designed for that thing. He's like Russell Westbrook. He's always giving 100% for every rebound, every transition, everything else. And he's the ultimate guy that it doesn't have to be pretty. but I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to make it work. And to your point, Oklahoma City is a team that is really good at the precision part of this, the execution part. But last night, Giannis, especially, I always pay attention to the Caruso minutes because he is, to me, Oklahoma City's curveball, and your ability to put him on most bigger players, and he gets low, he gets handsy, he gets steals, he just disrupts you. It has such a factor. And I think he got a steal from Giannis very early in that matchup. But after that, they'd get Giannis, they'd flatten everything out, they'd get Giannis the ball at the center of the court somewhere, and he would just very methodically back him down, get to the rim, and made it look easy. And so for me, it was definitely one of the things is that Giannis is one of those players that breaks your ability to switch. You wonder about this now with players like Drew Holiday, who the Celtics like that he's able to do that. Is Giannis a guy that's not bothered by it? And then on the other side, obviously, Oklahoma City, Caruso's such an important part of disrupting, but he just made no impact on Milwaukee in this game. And it's one of Milwaukee's big punches against everybody, and it's one of Oklahoma City's big punches that was completely negated.
And look, there's another factor in this game that was huge for the Bucks. And this is where, to me, the conversation is starting to change about the Bucks. And I'm not going to overreact to this stretch they're in or what happened last night. I'm not saying this team can win a title yet. I will say that they've now gotten into the mix in the East again, where you have to pay attention to what they're doing because, number one, the rhythm is better between Giannis and Dame. There's no question about it. Damian Lillard's more comfortable. He looks more comfortable. Last year, he looked uncertain. He looked deferential too much. When Giannis wouldn't play, was off the floor, it looked like Dame in Portland. When Giannis was on the floor, a lot of times it didn't. He looks more like he's himself. He's comfortable with this role, this team of playing next to another superstar. So you can't ignore that chemistry's better. But then defensively, they were laughably bad last year, and they were horrible to start the year. You can't deny the effort has been better, especially when it comes to changing ends of the floor. This is where I thought they just didn't give themselves a chance. When I watched them early in the season, or I watched them even as the year closed out a year ago, they just didn't look fast enough or quick enough laterally to be able to guard modern offenses. That's what it looked like to me. And changing ends of the floor was like too slow. And we know that's not Dame's wheelhouse, like really grind it defensively. So that was the concern. Well, look, it's been better. And last night, to that point, Adam, very important number last night. Oklahoma City makes you pay for turning the ball over at a higher rate than any team in the NBA. Last night, the Bucks turned the ball over 19 times. That is a lot for an NBA game. If that was the Bucks the beginning of the year or the Bucks last season, those 19 turnovers would have led to 30 points. Last night, Oklahoma City scored 11 points off of 19 turnovers. That just has not been the norm for the Bucks, and it's not the norm for OKC. And look, some of that is they missed transition threes because they had a horrible shooting night. So maybe that number comes up, but still, they got back to a better degree last night. Their seriousness about it, their attentiveness to it. Their defense is no longer, right now as I look at them, an incapacitating weakness where I go, they can't overcome that. Now their offense is good enough and their defense is average or better than average on given nights. That gives them a legitimate shot to be relevant with that next group of teams in the Eastern Conference outside of Boston.
I love the point. The other thing that stood out to me, well, actually, this is a small thing, and I'm curious what you think, because I'm impressed with Oklahoma City's ability to close out, to protect the paint and then close out. And I thought one thing teams do is, you'll overload the ball, they'll shift, they're really aggressive, and then you skip the ball all the way to the other side. And I thought one thing Milwaukee did, because by virtue of their size, was a lot of their overload the defense, and instead of skip the ball, it's get the ball to the center of the court. It almost negates the strength of rotating over, and you almost freeze the rotation in the middle of the court more. So you could either then get the extra pass, so it goes from right side to middle to left, or right side to middle, and now you just attack with your bigs from there, and it really works. So it was almost like they found a workaround away from the great rotations that Oklahoma City was making, and that's by virtue of the fact that they have such big players. Another guy, though, I want to get your take on is Andre Jackson Jr. They're 11-5 with him in the starting, or 11-4 with him in the starting lineup this year. That seems now, that's a big enough sample size that we could say he's making an impact. And when you watch him last night, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 21 points on 24 shots. He's a heck of a defender. And a lot of those possessions were him. He just is so good at shadowing, staying with a guy, all the different fakes. And then he's just so long and he's quick to kind of contest things, not jumping high, but just quick to get off his feet. I thought that watching him guard Shea, it's possible we're underrating how good of a perimeter defender is, because that's a tough cover. And he did an A+ job, in my opinion.
It was an eye-opening moment. And I've been watching him all year, and you love his energy and you love his commitment to that end. But this was a high-profile game, the most high-profile game they've played this year. And you watched him last night. And look, I'll say this, and because this is true about most of these guys on the level of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If you gave Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the exact same shots against this team, like the next time they played, that might be a 35-point night, because that's how good these guys are, right? So I'm not, in any way taking away from like his impact, because all you're trying to do against these players on that level, make them less efficient. We talk about all the time, superstars get to their number, or they get to a floor that's still really high for most players in this league, even on a bad night. And Shai, he shot the ball horribly. He still got 20 plus. He's going to do that because he's got the ball so much. He's going to get to the line. But look, some of those are, he missed shots. But the bottom line is, do you have somebody on your roster that can do a good enough job on him initially where you're not selling out with too much help that now makes their three-point shooters more lethal? Like, do you have anybody that can do it? And when you looked at their guards in particular, because Andre Jackson Jr. is really, he's a wing. You look at Milwaukee's guards, you're going, well, it's not coming from the guard spot. Right. Like, none of these guys are going to be able to do that to Shai. So the fact that they have this guy now that can do that against that type of player, a quick, shifty, primary usage ball handling type of guard that can light you up, and at least you have somebody in your roster that can go out there and do a pretty good job at the point of attack. And if he is beat or he gets juked, which Shai's going to do that to you, he can recover with his length and still get in there and somewhat bother him to help lead to this kind of night. Absolutely agree with you. It's a big deal in how you view the Bucks and some of the guys they are going to potentially have to guard. When you look at the guys Boston have, you look at Donovan Mitchell, you look at a Jalen Brunson, you look at the different guys that you're going to have to deal with that handle the ball a lot in the East. It's nice for Milwaukee to have a guy they feel very confident in, they can put on them and do a more than adequate job.
And they have three guys that kind of occupy, that make them look a little bit different. So Andre Jackson Jr., and by the way, 2 points last night, goes 0 of 4 from the 3-point line, 1 of 6 overall. Didn't really affect him. I mean, they only scored 97 points, but again, the game took on the texture of a defensive battle. So, he fit right in, and I don't think it really crushed their offense. They have AJ Green, who really is an underrated defender. He does a good job, but he's their 3-point option. And then you have Gary Trent, who's supposed to be something, I guess, in between. And he had a great game, 13 points, went 3 of 6 from 3, including some big shots in that stretch I'm talking about, which really opened it up. And maybe the game is as simple as that. He doesn't always make his shots. He did last night, and so it worked out. But I look at it and I go, the Bucks have those three guys, and they can kind of pick with their core players, Giannis, Lopez, Dame. You can kind of pick who you put around them. And Andre Jackson's going to be the defensive option there. But those other guys, what they give you will determine a lot. And they're all different looks. All three of them did their job really well last night. And that might be, to me, the biggest bellwether for their success going forward. If you get positive contributions from 2 out of 3 of those guys, you probably win. If you get positive contributions from all 3, you almost certainly win. Last night was a 3 for 3 night.
No doubt about it. You know what? One thing that was interesting to me in looking at the results of this overall, and I tied it into last year. So in both situations, the Cup was new last year, where I was super excited about it, energized. And I thought this year everybody was excited about it. Look at the teams that were getting all kinds of love and shine, right? Up to a certain point. Last year, it was Indiana.
Yeah.
Right? For the most part, younger guys, this young star that was coming into his own, and Tyrese Halliburton that everybody was enamored with during the Cup run. Younger team. Look at this year. You had the Houston Rockets, right? Very young team. Everybody again given, and rightfully so, all kinds of love for the season they've had to this point, for the fact that they win their first Cup game. Now they get into the semifinals. And then you have Oklahoma City, very young team. You know what's interesting though? At the end of the day, who wins the Cup both years? Veteran teams with star players on it that navigated this final situation better. And for whatever reason, who knows? Like maybe they handled the neutral court better than some of the younger teams. Maybe they handled being in Vegas better. I mean, honestly,
honestly, maybe.
I mean, seriously, like you just don't know. But I found it interesting to think like these young teams that like we going in, we always said like, okay, it would mean a lot to these teams to do it for these specific young players, for these young teams to feel good about themselves. And at the end of the day, when you get down to that last game, the two teams that get it done were the two older veteran teams that were able to get laser focused when they needed to, execute the game plan, and have their top guys play very, very well. And that wasn't the case a year ago, and it wasn't the case again last night. I just found that kind of interesting.
Well, let me ask you, because you just said something about, Vegas being a distraction to younger guys. You didn't have an NBA Cup back when you were playing. It's only 2 years old. But I'm so curious, because to me, we saw this last year, by the way. New Orleans, young team, they go to the semifinal. They lose by 50 points. Clearly, they were out the night before in Las Vegas. If you were on a team, if you could put yourself in those shoes, you're on a team, you're going to this midseason tournament cup final, it's in Vegas. What's the confidence level that your team would be in bed and rested that night versus you'd be like, I don't know, man, some of these guys might be out in Vegas?
Depends on the team, man. I played on some teams where I would be like, you're like literally you're like grabbing guys at the roulette table to get to shoot around. Like, hey, let's go. We got to catch the bus. You know what I mean? Like, so I played on teams like that, and then you played on teams, where it was a little bit more. And a lot of it just depends on your leadership on the team. And it just and everything Giannis was saying in the whole time, was indicating that this was something they were taking very seriously. I'm not saying Oklahoma City didn't, and I'm not making any accusations about anybody because I have no idea. All I'm saying is it looks like the two veteran teams both years handled this last part better than some of the younger teams that had gotten to that point, right? And again, you have to have a different mindset to play in a neutral court. Like in a big game, again, it's all internal. Where do you derive that adrenaline from? It's not there. Because even on the road in an NBA game, you derive adrenaline from the road crowd hating on you. Like you do. You run out of that tunnel, man, and you feel that negative energy, and that's an adrenaline rush. So when you're not in that situation, you got to manufacture that from within. And it seemed like the Lakers did a good job of that last year. It felt like the Milwaukee Bucks did a great job of it last night.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the Bucks? I mean, the only last thing I would say is that it's difficult for a team to go through what they went through at the start of the year, coming off of a disappointing year last year and then start the season disappointing and not fall apart. Everybody was writing Bucks trades. It didn't work. What's going to happen? Where's Giannis going to end up? This or that. And they've weathered that storm and they've come back. The vibe around that team seems excellent. So to me, I look at it and I go, it's actually impressive when a team can handle adversity almost more so than when they avoid adversity. And so I'm just impressed with this Bucks team. The basketball questions are going to be there. We'll wait to see how they continue. And if the Lakers kind of fell apart after the in-season tournament last year, we'll see if the Bucks do that. But I'm just impressed. And you said that you didn't have them in the contender tier. This one to me knocks them up into the challenging. Boston's in the contender tier in the East, but for me, I'm just ready to put them out there and say, you know what? They're back. They're back to where I thought they were going to be given the talent.
Yeah. Look, I think they're now in a situation where, okay, from this point forward, you have to start watching the Bucks, take them seriously, look at them in the relation to the pecking order in the East and say, absolutely. Cause look at the Eastern Conference right now. And we know who Boston is. We know ultimately what we expect. They're one of the teams that you expect will be in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
So do you think Milwaukee playing the way that they're playing right now and the way that Giannis is playing, and Giannis has been as good this year as any year of his career, and Lillard looks, way more comfortable. You don't think they could, beat these next group of teams? Cleveland or the Knicks or Orlando? Of course, you would think that that's possible. Now, we don't have to predict those because that's a long way down the road. But at least now you're saying, okay, I could see that happening. When you looked at the way their season ended, okay, under 500 for a long stretch under Doc Rivers, and then they lose in the playoffs. I know they were banged up, but they get knocked out in the playoffs.
Right.
So now you come into this year 2-8 out of the gate, all kinds of questions about this team. And man, they've answered the bell. And in large part, because their leader and best player, right, is this committed and dedicated to being one of the all-time greats. It matters that much to him that he wasn't about to just start saying things after the game that lead to fractures in your locker room. He wasn't throwing his coach under the bus. He wasn't pouting. He wasn't taking nights off. 2-8. Let me give me a load management night and get away from this. You see that stuff all the time around the league. It's a testament to him more than anything else. Their leader and their best player is a guy that brings it every single day, no matter the circumstances. And eventually it buys you time to get some other things figured out. And that's what they've done.
Real quickly, I just was looking at their schedule because I was wondering what's coming up next. Their next game is at Cleveland, which is obviously a huge game. It's a matchup of another team. It just is a weird one. I'm giving you a false equivalency here, I guess. But what game is more important, the one last night or the one on Friday at Cleveland?
The one on Friday, without question. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, actually, to his credit, he referenced Cleveland in his post-game comments. And that tells you where his mind is at. He's basically saying all we've done to this point, he really wanted to win this. And part of him, obviously, it's cool, man. He wanted some of those younger guys to get that money. And that's a really cool thing, man. When you look at $500,000 to the number of guys on that team that are in a certain salary slot in this league, that's a lot of money to those. It's a lot of money regardless. I don't want to dismiss $500,000 to anybody, but it obviously means a lot more to the last 6 guys on their roster than it does to Giannis and Dame. But Giannis wanted it for them. And so he's very happy about that he was able to get that done and put some extra money in those guys' pockets. Lillard even made a comment before the game. He'd love to help out the support staff, people that are there, dusk to dawn every day and beyond, that don't make a ton of money. He wanted to use some of that. But then it's funny because he quickly said, just so y'all know, I'm not talking about the whole 500, okay? I'm talking about helping those people out, which I thought was very, very funny. But so that mattered, okay?
Yeah.
But it also mattered. Giannis basically said, hey, man, this is great. And all this is done is set the stage now to go and let's see where we stack up against these other teams. And I can't wait to play against Cleveland and hopefully get a win on Wednesday. I thought that was very telling.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. And that is a cool part of this, is that little cash bonus. If we go to the other side, though, because I do want to talk about the Thunder here, what do you take away from this game that you feel might be concerning for the Thunder? Only 81 points is concerning. Did the Bucks expose anything that might about them that might point to weaknesses that'll pop up come playoff time?
There are 3 things that are the only 3 things, and they are always there. They're written down for me, and I'm watching them, and they don't surface very often with this team, but when they do and they lose in a particular way against a particular opponent, these are the things I always look at. The first is the size. We talked about that. Now, again, they addressed it, but did they address it in a meaningful way where they can play a bigger lineup if they need to against a particular team? Or are those guys not going to play a ton together? We don't know that. We got to see what that looks like with Chet and Hartenstein. I don't know. Because if it's just one big at a time, then you're still going to have that problem against those teams if you can't figure out a way for that to seamlessly blend on both ends of the floor. So that's a concern. We saw it last night. Second is they can go cold from the 3-point line. They have these droughts sometimes where you go, okay, is that good enough? Because some nights it requires a lot more. Last night, they were a minus 36 from the 3-point line. It's not survivable in this league. So, and that's obviously 5 threes and 32 attempts. It's not a normal night for them, but they can have moments like that where they string together 8-10 misses in a row. That's a concern. It surfaced last night. And then the last one is Jalen Williams.
Yes.
That guy, we both love him, but is he that guy that on a night when Shea goes 8 for 24, you go 13 for 20, not 8 for 20. And so that's the other component. So to me, those are the only 3 things that I worry about. I think they're exceptionally well coached. They're deep. They're incredibly talented defensively in their commitment to each other and their team speed. They've got a superstar closing type player in Shea that can break down any defense. They got a little bit of everything, right? Everything you want. So those are the three things. And if you're going to, it's not even nitpicking. Those are legitimate things to watch. And they all surfaced last night in one game, which led to their worst game of the season. When all of those things pop up, if even one of them pops up in a bad spot, Adam, any one of those three things on a given night against a good team could cost them a game. If all three things surface on the same night, you get an 81-point game and you get their worst performance by a mile this year from what I've watched. So for me, yes, those are the concerns, not panicking about them, but those are the three things I think that you'll watch when this team plays. And if they struggle, did any of these things rear themselves?
Jalen Williams is the one that stands out to me, man, because I love his game. I'm super high on him. But last year he had a rough playoffs. You go, okay, all right, getting his toes wet a little bit, see what happens. And then you see a game like tonight, high profile one, and he just looked off. And some of this was, defense ramps up. They did a good job protecting the paint. So you're going to be outside a little bit more outside the paint, and he's missing shots. So that's part of it. But I also just thought he looked like some of the moves he was making, dribbles off his foot on one play, just some of the stuff where you look at and you go, man, that's not just a tough shooting night. He looks uncharacteristically sped up and off rhythm. And some of it, again, I tip my hat to the Bucks, but him specifically, I look at and I go, he just had a bad game following a bad playoff. So I don't know. To me, he's now on my list of I've seen enough big games now from him that I go, I'm at least curious to see if he has himself a good playoff this year. Cause there's at least question around him to wonder.
No, it's fair, man. It's fair. Nobody's being irrational here.
Pillow talk.
We're not irrational ever on this show. Yeah. I mean, you occasionally dive into that end of the pool,
every now and then.
And then I got to call, the pillows come out and everything else when you get too irrational. But so we're not being irrational. It's fair, man. It's a fair thing. Jalen Williams is a really, really good player. He's an all-star caliber player. It doesn't mean he's a perennial all-star because there's a lot of guys that play that spot that are also all-star caliber players. Some years he might make it, some years he won't. Going forward, he's an all-star caliber player. That's the best you can say about him. But is that going to be enough for them to navigate what they're going to have to make this 3-round run to the finals that they're expecting? Is that going to be enough when you look at some of the other teams that they're going to be playing against? Is he in a series, if they get back to that series with Dallas and Shea and Luka offset each other, can Jalen Williams offset Kyrie? Yep. Can he go toe-to-toe with Kyrie Irving in that spot? And then all the role players on both teams, they have to do their job. But that's what you're looking at. How does he stack up with that next guy, right? And that's what we're looking at. And last night, unfortunately for him, did not play very. I don't know if it would have mattered if he did play great. It would have been a closer game. But with the way the rest of the team played, I don't think it would have been enough anyway.
The other guy I look at is Isaiah Joe, another guy I love. If you look at his points this year, a lot of them come in transition, and a lot of them come off of that guard-to-guard ghost action we've broken down on this show before, where he'll set the screen and then release really quickly and throws you off. The Bucks took transition away, as we talked about. They did a great job of that. And then that action, he just never got clean looks. And you look at him and go, he's a guy that scores off of that, and it makes them dynamic. But when the game gets more physical, if you take those things away, I'm not sure what he provides you. He got off 6 shots. I didn't think they were the cleanest 6 threes. And he had just 7 points. So he's another guy I look at and I go, I'm always curious about what players can be taken out when the defense tightens up, everything's a little more focused and the physicality goes up. And J-Dub is one, and Isaiah Joe is the other that at least last night's game, I wondered if the texture of the game is the type of game he's not going to be a part of.
Well, listen, and I don't think we should let Lou Dort off the hook here. Lou Dort is another guy that they targeted last night to take out of the game. They're not going to allow him to get catch and shoot threes. And he's not going to do much off the dribble. He's going to get a little bit in transition, but for the most part, he's going to shoot threes. And in the last 3 games coming into this, he had averaged 4 made threes in those 3 games. He goes 0 for 4 from the 3-point line last night. 5 shots overall in 30 minutes gives you 4 points. They're used to getting double digits out of Lou Dort. Give us 10, give us 12. Some nights maybe 15, 18 if he gets hot. And he was a non-factor. Isaiah Joe, non-factor. So they did a very good job, man, of making Shea have to do an awful lot and Jalen Williams to beat them. And let's not let these other guys become impact players. Yeah. And the Bucks just were more locked in from the start of the game on, really. I mean, they didn't get the separation till later, but you could just see their intent. They were going to play to their strengths, and they were going to do everything they could to make OKC play to their weaknesses. And I thought Milwaukee did a good job of it.
What did you make of the fact that the Bucks did not pop champagne? Champagne was provided. It was there in the room, but they said, you know what?
I love it. I love it. I don't think you pop champagne for that. Yeah, I don't think you pop champagne for that. And look, part of it was, did you hear Giannis's quote about when he drank champagne after the championship? Because he doesn't drink. He's a notorious non-drinker. He doesn't like alcohol. He doesn't put it in his body. He drank a lot the night they won the championship. He said he woke up in a full body cramp. So he said he was afraid to even go down that road. I think that was part of it. I also think part of it was like, we're playing for something way bigger. And in some ways, to like some of those veteran guys feel a little silly popping champagne for something like that. It's mid-December. You know what I mean? So did the Lakers?
Yeah, they did. And I think that's part of it is Darvin Ham, who was the coach, obviously, for the Lakers. There was some ridicule. Fans had a good time with it. And I think after the game, they said, we talked to Darvin Ham. He was like, hey, we did this last year. I don't think we should do it this year.
I think I thought it was a good statement to make. It wasn't like they won it and they were standing there, taking pictures with somber looks on their face. Like I'd rather be anywhere else. They didn't do that. Giannis, in fact, particularly, man, he was so exuberant after the game, bouncing around, jumping around. He was so happy. His quotes after the game, such intensity with the way he answered the questions. He really wanted to win this. It mattered a lot. He got it. And, I guess this is another thing that goes on your basketball reference page, the MVP of the Emirates Cup. I mean, it's another thing for him, but at the same time, be able to put it into context. And he even said, let's go out. I mean, I want you guys, everybody go out tonight, have fun, celebrate all that, but let's stay humble and understand we got to get right back in the film room in the gym right after this and continue what we're doing right now. And let's go play Cleveland on Friday. I thought his approach, man, everything about it was great.
Yeah, it's weird because the NBA wants to make this a big thing, but the players don't want to make it too big of a thing. So it's in a weird spot, but I'm with you. I'm glad they didn't do the champagne thing, and I'm glad that they celebrated and took it seriously. Somebody needs to come up with a new tradition where when you win the cup, you do a thing so that it's not ridiculed. It's like, that's what you do when you win the cup.
Yeah, you're onto something. I think that's a great idea. You mean each year you come up with something new, like that team has their own thing?
Or I think it's just one thing, like one team, like, okay, champagne, that's the thing you do for you winning the big championship. What's the thing you do when you win the cup? It's like a specific type of celebration that allows guys to feel the importance of it without going overboard. I don't know what that is, but
you pour like O'Doul's on each other's head, like non-alcoholic beer, like something like that. You know what I mean?
Just something silly, something like that.
I hear what you're saying. No, I think it's a good idea. I think somebody create basically, this is the mandate going forward. This is how we're going to handle this for all future teams, what you want to do. And look, I guess if some group wants to do that, go ahead. Maybe a younger team breaking through, maybe they would want to do that. You know what I mean? Like a little bit younger, a little bit more, a little sillier. Some of those guys have never popped champagne, before for a celebration at a sporting event. Maybe if it was Oklahoma City or Houston or Indiana last year, maybe it would feel different to a younger core group of guys than a veteran team, with a veteran coach that's been around, that's won a championship himself. It's going to feel different to that particular makeup of guys.
I said this on Monday's show, but I think the real thing about the NBA Cup is if you win both the cup and the championship in the same year, I think that's when it'll mean the most. Because then it's like, hey, we won both trophies. You win one individually, like the Lakers won last year. Nobody thinks anything of it. The Bucks now have the first step. If they go on to win the title this year, you can look back and say, hey, we dominated in December. We dominated in June. Like we won both cups, and that will be like a cherry on top. It'll be an extra thing. But if they don't,
I think if I saw something correctly, I love that you're making really, really good points, man, on this, because I think that's very true. I think it will have more meaning. The context will be greater at the end of the year if you pull off both, as saying, hey, man, that was really important to us. It was an impetus for us. Right. To get better, or to continue what we were doing, or understand what we're capable of if we play with intent and play hard. Whatever, you're right. Because wasn't it the Lakers last year? I think they lost 10 out of 13 after winning the cup.
It was the beginning of the end. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very, very good point. Very fair.
Oh, I like Gabe. He says, cut the nets. That's an example of a thing you do for the Final Four, and that's the way you celebrate the Final Four. So I'm not saying cut the nets. Maybe that one's already taken, but it's some ceremonial thing that becomes when we win the cup, that's what we do. We do this thing, and it becomes the tradition. All right, let's take a break because there's more news in the NBA, including my beloved Denver Nuggets, who are reportedly aggressive in the trade market, looking to move one Michael Porter Jr., perhaps for Zach Lavine, Brandon Ingram, and a host of other names. So I'm going to get Legs' take on that on the other side. First, let me tell you guys, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com/AllNBA. Make sure you use our promo code. It really helps us out. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and older, present in Colorado. First online real money wager only, $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. And if you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-522-4700. Also want to tell you guys about Game Time. If you're buying tickets or if you have not done your Christmas shopping yet and you need to do your Christmas shopping, you just remembered that Christmas is next week. Well, you can hop on the Game Time app and you can buy tickets for your family, friends, or whoever else to go check out an NBA, NFL game, NHL game if you got one in your town. They got killer last-minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. They have those flash deals, zone deals. You can even set alerts and say, I'm looking for this game on this date, but I don't like the price right now. Send me alerts if prices drop, and then you'll get a little push notification. And they have that feature on the front page where it says all in pricing. You click on that, and you're not surprised by taxes or fees when you check out. The price as you scroll is going to be your checkout price. It's a super helpful feature. I don't know why sites ever did that, fees and everything at the very end, because you go to check out, and it's a total nightmare. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code ALLNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ALLNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, back here, segment 2. I got Tim Legler with me. And there was some news today on The Athletic reported by Tony Jones and Sam Amick that the Denver Nuggets are aggressive in the trade market right now. Perhaps looking to move Michael Porter Jr. I think he's on a max contract. He's maybe the most movable piece on their roster, a useful 6'10 shooter. But the names they're looking at are kind of interesting to me. Zach Lavine, Cam Johnson, and probably either Dorian Finney-Smith and Bojan Bogdanovic alongside him, Brandon Ingram, Jordan Poole, Jordan Clarkson, DeAndre Hunter, Jonas Valanciunas. Let's start at the top of that list with Zach Lavine, because he was the guy that the report said, at least, the Nuggets were the most aggressive pursuing. The Nuggets have Jamal Murray. They have Russell Westbrook. Is Zach Lavine a good fit for the Denver Nuggets, and in particular, replacing Michael Porter, at small forward?
You think Zach Lavine makes you better than having Michael Porter Jr. in that spot?
I don't think so. I think it's you're about the same. It helped your offense is there. Maybe it gives you another driver. There's some reasons to think maybe it makes your offense better, but guess what? Offense is not a problem with Denver.
That's exactly right. And Zach Lavine is not, he's not a big factor defensively. He's not going to rebound the ball at the level Michael Porter Jr. has. And Michael Porter Jr., his rebounding was a weakness in his career early on. He was, he wasn't physically, his frame and just his mentality wasn't ready. And he got picked on. Defensively, he got picked on by getting thrown around on the glass. He's gotten to the point where Michael Porter Jr. has had some big rebounding games in big spots, and he's gotten some tough rebounds in traffic when you have to have it. He is legitimately 6'10". So, and he's got a, shooting stroke that's right there with Lavine. These are two of the best, shooting strokes in the league. Both of those guys can really fill it up. I don't know that Zach Lavine makes you significantly better. He's also, what's Zach Lavine's track record in big moments in big postseason games? Doesn't really have one. Michael Porter Jr. has been through that. He has, and he's played well in big spots for them in the postseason. So I just don't know that to me is anything where I go, oh man, yes, that's absolutely a vertical move. That feels very much like a lateral move or a slight step back.
If I play devil's advocate, because I think I agree with you, that Michael Porter provides some things to them that are hard to replace. Zach Lavine, Denver does need ball handlers. They don't have a lot of guys that can create their own shot or can just handle the ball. And we saw last year when Minnesota really put the pressure on Jamal Murray, you needed a release valve and Denver didn't have one. So Zach Lavine would give you a secondary guy that could bring the ball up the court, run pick and roll, create his own shot, run the bench, all of these different things. That would be a value add. I think when you look at Michael Porter, he's the guy that most misses assignments defensively and most misses reads offensively. It's just who he is. Some guys think the game quickly. He thinks it a little bit slowly. Zach Lavine has never been great at that, but maybe you get him into Denver's system. You see the success Westbrook has had because guys that can get into the paint, Jokic opens up the paint, so that's a good partnership. Maybe Zach Lavine would provide that. So while I agree with you that defensively, I just don't get what Denver's doing. They need help defensively. You're not bringing in a defensive player there. But offensively, you could say the ball handling and ability to get into the paint would be something Denver could really use.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point. He's certainly going to be a little bit better with the basketball and coming off a ball screen or isolating on a guy and being able to get to a better spot. Yeah, I guess you're right. He's better than Michael Porter Jr. in that regard. But to my point I made earlier, I wasn't sure exactly what Zach Lavine's playoff track record is, and now I do. I just looked it up. Do you know how many games Zach Lavine's played in the playoffs in his career? 4.
Quick series.
4. So and he shot, he averaged 19 points a game, shot 42% in that series. And that doesn't mean the guy, who knows? I'm just saying, I would rather, if I'm Denver, I'd rather get a guy, and I know you don't want it, you don't want a guy that's in his mid-30s that's got a ton of playoff experience like that. That's just not just to make that point, but I'm saying I'd rather have a guy that's been around as long as Zach Lavine. As you get a guy in that same age bracket, same wheelhouse, that at least has had a little bit more taste of it and has played well in those spots. To me, that would be something that I would look for if I was Denver. I agree with you about the ball handling component and getting his own offense, getting his own shot, and Denver does not have a lot of that. I don't know. To me, I don't know that's something that's going to make them, in my mind, would make them more viable to me in the West if they made that move.
All right, well, let's go to Brandon Ingram because him and Michael Porter are at least comparable. Long, skinny, shooters, but they definitely have different mentalities and different, personalities. I'm not a Brandon Ingram guy. You know this. So to me, this would put me in hell. But he is really talented. And is there any chance that, in the Michael Porter role, he could thrive in Denver?
I don't know, man. There's just no trust factor for me with Brandon Ingram. I love the talent.
Day over here, legs. Come on, man.
Sorry, man. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'd love to say something different. I don't have enough faith in him. Number one, he's hurt a lot.
Yeah.
The guy gets hurt a lot. And that's, to me, is not like where at some point you don't just go, oh, man, that's kind of flukish. At some point, you got to go, man, what is up? Like Joel Embiid, somebody said, I don't know if this is true. Somebody sent me a text message the other day that said there's been 35 facial fractures in the NBA, period, total, in 50 years. He's got 3 of them. And I just, you start to go okay, is that just all bad luck? Or is this guy just, maybe. I don't know. He's not smarter in the way that he goes about his business on the court to protect his body a little bit, but I don't know. But same thing with Ingram. It's at some point you go, oh, this isn't a string of bad luck here. It's no, it's not going to happen. He's not going to be healthy. Now he can flat out score, man. He is a far more talented offensive player than Michael Porter Jr. There is no question about that. And I think even defensively, when he gets serious about it, I think is probably can even do more things. But I just don't know if the intensity level is there, the want to is there, and can he stay healthy? For me, that would be a red flag.
Be a nightmare for me, man, to risk Jokic's prime on a guy that just has not shown the motivation needed and in the sense of urgency needed that the Nuggets are bringing to the season. All right, some trades I do like. So Cam Johnson and probably Dorian Finney-Smith, but maybe Bojan Bogdanovic. Cam Johnson, to me, another guy that's going to be a tall shooter, so you recoup what you lose from Michael Porter in the shooting department, I think. And then just a guy that's going to be, one, less needy. Cam Johnson is fine if he touches the ball 10 times, gets 6 shots. He's fine with that. He understands the game. He reads it really well. He's a guy that I actually would love in Denver. And then you get an additional Dorian Finney-Smith or Bojan Bogdanovic, both of guys who would make Denver's top 8 rotation. That's a move to me that I can get behind.
I think Cam Johnson is a good player. I like him. He doesn't fall into the category. The first two guys you mentioned who I had some question marks about. I don't really have any question marks about him. I think there's a limitation on his ceiling, but so does Michael Porter Jr., right? They both have limitations on their ceiling. But again, I don't know that is much different than what you have now. And you already have, and you have a guy that has, to your point, I think you were making a point there about, like, does he get pouty? Does he get sullen, Michael Porter Jr., if, like, he's not getting his number called?
He does. Yeah,
okay.
Sometimes he does.
So I don't think it, to me, when I've watched him, it's been something that, like, jumped out to me where I thought, man, this guy's got an attitude problem or something like that. So, but I agree if it can be there, but he at least knows exactly how he has to play off of Jokic. Yeah. Like, he knows exactly what that looks like, that system and everything else. And so, again, it's kind of a lateral move. I like Cam Johnson a lot. I like Michael Porter Jr. too. So I don't know. That's a tough one for me. That's 6-1, half dozen the other.
I think you might be right. I still think it might work a little bit better just because Cam Johnson to me is a pro and he knows he's a fifth option. Michael Porter, sometimes he's a second option, sometimes he's a fifth. Kind of goes back and forth. Definitely would love to be a second option. I think Cam Johnson's fine being a fifth option, and sometimes that helps. Just the clarity of
if Michael Porter Jr. or Cam Johnson are your second option, you're going to the lottery.
You're in trouble. The last ones for you, Jordon Poole, Jordan Clarkson, they're kind of a similar mold. That would be a sixth man type guy. You're getting now a guy who can get his shots up. Denver has always struggled when Jokic is not on the court. I don't know how to solve that problem. This is a 10-year problem that the Nuggets, for some reason, can't figure out how to get a lineup that can score when Jokic goes to the bench. Maybe the answer is just get a guy who's good at buckets. You don't have a system when Jokic's at the bench. Forget it. Don't try to run one. You just got a couple guys that can get their own shot, and you live and die with that. Do you buy any rationale to one of those two guys, Jordon Poole or Jordan Clarkson?
Yeah, Jordan Clarkson. I mean, I think Jordan Clarkson is, he is very comfortable with the lane you put him in. Just let him do his thing, and he's gonna do that for you. He can score against anybody. He seems to have a more positive energy and vibe than Jordan Poole. Like, Jordan Poole is a tough guy to read for me because when he first broke onto the scene in Golden State, man, I thought this guy's got a super high skill level set. And obviously it all fell apart there for a lot of reasons, some of which were directly attributed to Draymond Green. But, like, at the same time, that situation doesn't arise out of nowhere. Okay, so and there's a reason Jordan Poole was then shipped. And he goes to a team in Washington, and you look at the Wizards and what Jordan Poole has been or done since he got there. Now, I don't know if he just needs to be back playing relevant games again and will kind of appreciate his skill level, or, you know what I mean? It's a chicken or the egg question. Like, I don't know, man. Like, what is this guy's DNA? What's his makeup? And we might not know that until he gets to another spot where he's playing meaningful games in a team that has expectations of winning. The talent is there. There's no doubt in my mind. Is his mind dialed in on the right things every night? I don't know, man. He's a very hard guy for me to read.
I was hoping you'd be more into the Cam Johnson one, just because that's the only one of these deals that doesn't make me, like, cringe. So maybe the Nuggets hunting for a move, but none of these.
I'll say this: of all of the ones you just mentioned, I would put Cam Johnson first. I'd put Zach Lavine a very close second. And the rest of those guys, I didn't love. Yeah. Is there anybody else out there that you didn't mention that's
so DeAndre Hunter is a name that was listed. He's having a really good stretch right now. He would be an interesting one, but I don't think you trade Michael Porter for DeAndre Hunter. If you got, like, Bogdanovich and Hunter, maybe it would work, but Hunter was the only name listed.
Yeah, I like DeAndre Hunter a lot. I mean, you're certainly gonna get a big time defender. A little bit streaky with his scoring and his shooting. So it's a little bit of a trade-off, but there's no doubt you're going to get a much more like a physical, longer, defensive-minded wing. Not longer, but a defensive-minded wing with length that would help them on that end of the floor. He's an interesting one to me, and he's got super high character.
You might be able to get Larry Nance Jr. with him, which Denver needs a backup center, big. He might be a guy that can
pull something like that off. I would strongly consider that. And also, I like the age of DeAndre Hunter. That's you're getting a guy that's right there, the right age that you're looking for. That'd be an interesting one. So some of these guys, maybe that's the problem. You didn't pair a second teammate to come to
Right.
Denver. It would have maybe made those deals more interesting to me. But if we're talking straight up in those situations, just looking at getting rid of MPJ and replacing him with one of those guys, that's maybe why I didn't love it. If you throw a second piece that is a rotational player for them into the mix, that changes everything. And is Michael Porter Jr. going to command that?
Yeah. Maybe in Atlanta, maybe to play with his old pal, Trae Young. I don't know. To round out the show now, there is a new NBA All-Star format, Legs. I don't know if you've seen this. They're always trying to solve the All-Star game. You can bring it up here, James. So first of all, they pick teams. There's going to be 4 teams, not 3. One of them is going to be the Rising Stars champion, whoever wins the Rising Stars game. The other 3 are going to be the NBA All-Stars. And you will have Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kenny the Jet Smith drafting the 3 NBA teams. Candace Parker will take the other one. And that's how you'll pick teams. And then the format is it's a Final Four style bracket where 2 of the teams will square off, and then the Rising Star will take the other All-Star team. The winners will advance to a championship game. And rather than just have a running clock, it's going to be the first team to 40 points in all of the games. So instead of 1 All-Star game, we got 3. We bring in the rookie-sophomore game for some reason into the equation. Legs, it's almost convoluted. Are you a fan? Do you hate it? What do you think?
I'm like this. Here's how I feel about it. I think the ship sailed on the All-Star game. I think it's just common acceptance amongst the players, even the young players, because the Rising Stars game isn't much different. It doesn't resemble real basketball. And that left the building a long time ago. And that's kind of just now what the NBA players want. It's what they expect. It's very much more like a weekend off, other than the time demands, which I know they've done a lot of press and media, and it's a little bit of a tiring weekend from that standpoint. But that last thing they want to do, and they've made it clear, is have to go and compete at that time of the year in any way that has remote intensity. And I don't think that's going to change. I just think that's permeated the entire league. It's the way they all view it. Until that mindset changed and there was some more pride put back into it. And the only way to do that, honestly, I think the only way to do that is an East-West game like it used to be, where you have
it's tradition.
Guys that want to make a statement on their conference, because at the end of the day, it makes a statement on what you're battling for and how much harder it is for you to come through your conference because of these teams. And we're going to show you how good the West is right now, because we're going to go and we're going to kick your ass in the All-Star game because we're going to play hard. Like, that's the mentality that guys kind of used to have. They took pride in that said East or West on their jersey. We've gotten so far away from that. I don't think you're going to be able to get that back. The genie's out of the bottle. I don't think you're putting it back. So my point being, I don't blame the league for trying something, but I don't think this is going to work. Now, are you going to get one of these teams to like rise up against these young players just to put them in their place? I don't know.
I think the other will be true. I think the young players will look at this and say, I have a chance to beat LeBron James, Steph Curry on the big stage. I'm going hard here.
That's not bad. And the only way that, you do that is, hey, the ball goes up in the air and all of a sudden, here comes this NBA All-Star team of 8 guys coming down the floor, and they got guys like bumping them on cuts and fighting them in the post. And they kind of look at each other collectively and go, wait a second, this is a basketball game. Okay, let's go. You guys want to play like that? We'll show you. Yeah. I guess, yes, if the Rising Stars team set the tone in that way, maybe you could get a little bit more of a rise out of them. But if the NBA All-Stars team won that game, and now you get 2 groups of 8 guys that are NBA All-Stars in the final game, it's right back to where it was anyway. Yeah. So you know what I mean? I just don't know that there's much you can do. Mindset has to change. Ideology has to change around the game. And we are so far removed from that. I don't know how you get that back.
All right, let's get to some super chats here to round out the show. What do we got here, James? I hear we got a bunch of them today, maybe a record. Cedric Exquisite says, I had fun in Milwaukee, beat down OKC, and stole their thunder. Cedric was at the game in Las Vegas, so there you go. He was the reason it was so dead in there. Nobody was cheering. Psycho Blue, he says, B-Ball Cthulhu thinks Darvin Ham made some kind of Faustin bargain with the B-Ball gods to be undefeated in the NBA Cup, and then everything else about his record is suspect. Hands in pockets power. All right, there you go. That's a fun theory. He is 2-0.
A little shot at my guy Darvin Ham. Come on now. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a compliment and a backhanded compliment. Shut up and take my money says, can't spell choke without OKC Thunder overrated. Man, this is the new NBA, Legs. Doesn't matter how good you are. You lose one game. Overrated.
I saw some comments early on in the chat, the people going down that road with OKC, and all that told me was the people making those comments aren't watching OKC. Yeah. You're not watching this team play on a nightly basis.
Kicking them while they're down, man.
Unfortunately for them, what you watched last night was literally nowhere near their best version. And what I've been watching all year, what you've been watching all year, what most people have been. For whatever reason that happened last night. A lot of it had to do with the Bucks, but a lot of it I think also just had to do with Oklahoma City, man, being flat, not digging their way out of it. And they just were not themselves last night on either end of the floor.
What else we got, James? Daniel Sidney says, as a Thunder fan, I'm not panicking over this bad performance, but we still held the Bucks to 97 points. That's a good point. Game was over when Giannis was able to dive on Dort's back and Bucks got 5 points in 3 seconds. That was a wild play. I mean, he's not wrong about that one.
Yeah. You know what, man? That was an interesting thing because coming right on the heels of what happened in that Warriors Houston game.
Yeah.
What a bad time for the NBA for that to happen.
They're like, we're not blowing the whistle. We're not blowing the whistle.
I mean, literally, you're not blowing the whistle. And this is, this isn't a game-defining play, game-deciding play, and you're not going to blow it. And there's, official right there looking right at it. And I thought, to me, more egregious example of a guy jumping late onto the pile from the top that should be an obvious foul, and they just let it go. And I'm perfectly fine, by the way, with not calling it. That's I don't think you should call it in that situation, man. And so that was just bad timing for that play to happen right there. One thing I'll say real quick about Oklahoma City, so people can wrap their head around this. You're right. Their defense, and that's what it is we love about them. Their defense keeps them in games, and their offense can be great some nights. And then when they do that, they're unbeatable. But their defense did still play really well last night for the most part, overall. But their offense was so bad it didn't give them a chance to compete in the game. And here's how good their defense has been this year, Adam. They're number 1 ranked defensive team in the league, despite the fact they're like 26th in defensive rebounding percentage, and they're last in the league in second chance points allowed. So that tells you, imagine how good their initial defense is every possession if you give up more second chance points than any team in the league, and you still have the best defense in the league. That's how good they are initially on a team's first sets, first actions, first shots in a possession. They're that good. They're not overrated. Doesn't mean they're going to necessarily win a championship. They're still very young. So they might break through one of the years. Maybe it's this year, maybe it isn't. But to say they're overrated or this exposed them terribly in some way, I just think that's an overstatement.
Yeah. That's how fans like to talk about things. Nico, you bring Chet back. They don't get bullied as much, and OKC doesn't have a massive slump shooting from 3. OKC wins that game. Bad matchup for no size. I don't know if you could say they win that game, but it certainly is a piece of this. Look, the Bucks didn't have Middleton in this one either, so both teams missing, an important cog in their starting lineup. But
I think it's hilarious that we just that the way that guy phrased that. You bring back a 7-foot, 180-pound guy, and now we're not going to get bullied anymore. It's just that made me laugh a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're not talking about Jalen Duren's physique coming back in, but I hear what you're saying. Chet is an elite defensive player, man. He was coming into his own, had an incredible start to the year. Unfortunate. I can't wait to see what they do and what Dagnall does when he's got both of those bigs at his disposal and the different types of lineups he can play.
Hopefully he gets enough games to really test it out. Daniel also says 22, 5-5, and 3 stocks don't come easy. All-star.
What does that mean?
I got to figure out who it is that he was referring to in this out of this game. Who had the 22, 5-5? Do I not know? Nobody had 22, 5-5. I guess that's somebody who was averaging. Man, should have given us a better prompt. All right, what else do we have? Is that it? That's the last one? Nope. OKC fans want Cam Johnson. Watch out, Denver. OKC, whoever they want, they're going to get because they have the most assets. They have the most tradable assets.
And you know what? He would fit real well in Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Oh, that was J-Dub. Yeah, I love J-Dub, man. He just had a rough game. And then everybody skips. Eric says, no Vyacheslav, no Adam. Yes, legs. Nuggets want the cookie. Weird one. All right. We have any more? Is that the last one? Randy Ballin says, guys, what do you think about an NBA Ryder Cup where it's the USA versus the world? I'm into it. I think the league's ready, but I don't think the league would ever do it.
You talking about for the All-Star format?
Yeah, for the All-Star, if they would go USA versus World. It'd be fun.
Man.
You got enough players from the world. Shea, Luka, Giannis, Jokic. Like, that's an All-Star team.
Man, I think the world would be in good shape. Personally.
I think the USA might be in a little trouble, to be honest with you. Carlos Hernandez says, who do you have winning a series, Tim? The way the Mavs played against the Warriors or OKC at their best? So top level Mavs, top level Oklahoma City. Both teams.
I'd say if you're talking about best level, Oklahoma City.
Really? Interesting.
The best version I've seen of them this year, that looks like the team that would be the biggest challenge to the Celtics. But, listen, here's the thing, though. You've got to get to that level consistently when you have to. So that could change throughout the year. And maybe Dallas hits a gear where I feel that way about them. Remains to be seen. But Oklahoma City's best games this year that I've seen they were just so incredibly impressive, particularly defensively, that I say, man, that's the team right there that probably represents the greatest challenge.
Was that the last one? That was a lot of super chats today, man. We got the people in.
A lot of super chats. That was great.
All right, cue that outro music. Cue that outro music there, James. We're back tomorrow. There's no basketball tonight. There's no basketball game. So tomorrow we're just going to have to bounce around the league and talk some big picture stuff, but it should be a good one. And then, of course, basketball returns tomorrow night, and we'll have a show on Friday breaking down those games as well. So do us a favor, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Hit that like button for us on the way out. We'll see you tomorrow.
Silly like the mayor.